I watched my daughter's hands shake as she read the message on my phone, and my entire world cracked open. She'd come over for coffee like she did every Sunday, expecting our usual chat about her new teaching job and my volunteer work at the community center. Instead, she found me crying in my kitchen, holding my phone like it might explode. The tears wouldn't stop, hadn't stopped since I'd opened that message thread an hour earlier. 68 years old, and I'd never felt more foolish. "Mom, what is this?" Her voice cut through my fog. "Why is Uncle Tom messaging you about Dad?" My brother Tom, my dead husband's brother, the man who'd stood beside us at our wedding 42 years ago, who'd helped carry the casket at Robert's funeral 3 years back. And now this. I'd grabbed my phone that morning to check a recipe my friend Linda had promised to send. Instead, I'd accidentally opened an old message thread, one I'd forgotten existed. Messages between Tom and Robert, from 4 years ago, when Robert was supposedly recovering from his first heart attack, when I was bringing him soup and managing his medications and sleeping in the chair beside his hospital bed because I couldn't bear to leave his side. The messages were about a woman named Caroline, plans to meet her, talk of leaving me once he got his affairs in order. My husband of 39 years, plotting his escape while I held his hand through medical tests. "Mom, talk to me." Sarah set down her coffee mug hard enough that it cracked against the granite. "Your father was planning to leave me." The words felt like glass in my throat. "Before he got sick. Tom knew. Tom helped him." Sarah's face went white. "That's impossible." I thrust the phone at her, watching her eyes scan the screen. Her expression shifted from disbelief to horror to something harder, angrier. She scrolled and scrolled, her jaw tightening with each swipe. "There's more," I said quietly. "Tom's been messaging me since your father died, being supportive, checking in, acting like he cared." I pulled up the recent messages, my hands steadier now. 3 days ago, I asked him if he could help me understand some of your father's old financial documents, things that didn't add up, and he said he'd come over today to explain everything. "He's coming here?" Sarah looked at her watch. "When?" 20 minutes ago. The doorbell rang. We both froze. Through the frosted glass of my front door, I could see Tom's tall silhouette, that familiar hunch of his shoulders that I'd once found comforting. He'd been my rock after Robert died, helping me navigate insurance claims and estate paperwork, taking me to doctor's appointments when my grief made driving impossible. I'd trusted him completely. "Don't answer it," Sarah whispered, but I was already moving toward the door. Something hot and sharp was building in my chest, something I hadn't felt in decades. Not since I was young enough to throw plates at walls when angry, before I learned to swallow everything down and smile and be the good wife, the patient mother, the gracious widow. I yanked the door open. Tom stood there with his gentle smile and a folder tucked under his arm, probably filled with more lies. "Margaret, sweetheart, I brought those documents you asked about. Should we sit down and go through them together?" "Did you know he had a whole separate bank account?" The question came out sharp as a blade. His smile faltered. "Let's talk inside." "Did you know about the $30,000 missing from our savings? The money I thought we were using for his medical bills?" My voice was rising, and neighbors' curtains were twitching, but I didn't care anymore. "Did you help him hide that too?" Tom glanced nervously at the watching windows. "Margaret, you're upset. Let me come in and we'll discuss this calmly." Sarah appeared behind me. "Answer her question, Uncle Tom." The gentleness fell off his face like a mask. What replaced it was colder, more calculating than I'd ever seen. "Your father made his choices. I was just being a good brother." Being a good brother? The laugh that burst out of me sounded unhinged. "You watched me cry myself sick at his funeral. You held my hand at the cemetery. You told me he loved me until his last breath." "He did love you, Margaret. That's what made it so complicated." Tom shifted his weight, gripping that folder tighter. "Caroline was his past coming back. They'd known each other before you, and when she reached out during his recovery, old feelings resurfaced. He was conflicted. He never wanted to hurt you. But he was going to leave her anyway, Sarah said, her voice deadly quiet. That's what you're saying. He was just waiting for the right moment to destroy her. Tom sighed like we were children who didn't understand adult complexities. Life isn't black and white. Robert cared deeply for your mother, but he felt trapped. The second heart attack complicated things, obviously. He never got the chance to make a clean break. The rage that swept through me was physical, electric. A clean break. You make it sound like a business transaction. I'm trying to help you understand, Tom said. Robert asked me to give you these after he died. He held out the folder. He wrote you a letter, explaining everything. I thought you weren't ready, but maybe now is the time. I stared at that folder like it was a snake. You've had this for 3 years? He made me promise to wait until you seemed strong enough to handle the truth. Sarah grabbed the folder from his hands before I could react, ripping it open. Papers scattered across my porch. Financial statements showing transfers to an account I'd never seen. Printouts of text messages between Robert and Caroline, dated throughout our marriage, not just during his recovery. Years of messages, love notes, plans, complaints about me, about how I was too needy, too emotional, too much. The ground tilted under my feet. Mom! Sarah caught my arm. Mom, don't look. Stop reading them. But I couldn't stop. Message after message, painting a picture of a marriage I hadn't known I was in. Me as the burden, the obstacle, the woman who didn't understand him like Caroline did. There was a message from our 30th anniversary, the night I'd thrown him a surprise party and invited all his college friends. While I'd been cleaning up, he'd been texting Caroline about how trapped he felt. There's a letter, too, Tom said quietly, from Robert, if you want to read it. I found it among the scattered papers, his handwriting, so familiar it hurt. The letter started with, "My dearest Margaret," and ended with, "I hope someday you'll forgive me." The middle was filled with justifications, explanations, a careful dismantling of our life together. He'd never loved me the way I deserved, he wrote. He tried, but something was always missing. Caroline filled that void. He'd planned to tell me after he recovered from the first heart attack, but then came the second one, and by then he was too weak to survive the confrontation he knew it would cause. He died a coward's death, I realized, keeping his secret safe, leaving me to mourn a ghost. Did everyone know? I asked Tom. Was I the only one who didn't see it? He had the decency to look uncomfortable. Linda suspected something, I think. At the hospital, she made a comment to me about Robert seeming distracted, even while sick, but nobody knew for certain except me. Linda, my best friend of 20 years, another person who'd watched me grieve and said nothing. Sarah was on her phone, still reading through the messages, her face growing paler. Mom, there's stuff here about me too. About how having a kid ruined his freedom. About how I was always too demanding. Her voice cracked. He called me exhausting when I was going through my divorce, said I inherited your neediness. The pain on my daughter's face broke something fundamental in me. I could survive being betrayed by my husband, by my brother-in-law, maybe even by my friend. But watching Sarah learn that her father had resented her existence, that was beyond bearing. Get out, I told Tom. Margaret, I understand you're angry, but running from this won't help. Robert wanted you to have closure. That's why he wrote the letter, so you could understand and move forward. Move forward? The words came out as a shriek. You want me to thank him for betraying me for years and then dying before I could confront him about it? You want me to be grateful he at least left me a note explaining why I wasn't good enough? That's not what I meant. What did you mean, Tom? Explain it to me like I'm stupid, since that's clearly what you all thought I was. I stepped toward him, and he actually backed up. Good. Did you think I'd read these messages and just accept it? Oh well, 40 years wasted, but at least Robert was honest eventually. He wasn't trying to hurt you. Then what was he trying to do? I was screaming now, properly screaming, something I'd never done in my entire adult life. What exactly was the plan here? Tom looked genuinely confused by my anger, which made everything worse. He wanted you to know the truth, to understand him. I don't want to understand him. I want my life back. I want the marriage I thought I had, even if it was a lie, because at least then I could sleep at night. My chest was heaving, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my skull. Do you have any idea what you've done? What he did? Sarah put her hand on my shoulder. Mom, let's go inside. He's not worth it. But I couldn't move. I was rooted to that porch, staring at Tom's uncomfortable face, understanding fully for the first time that he genuinely thought he was being kind, that revealing all of this was some sort of gift, that I should thank him for destroying the only good memories I had left. The money, I said suddenly. Where did the $30,000 go? Tom hesitated. Robert set it aside for Caroline, in case something happened to him. She'd been struggling financially, and he wanted to make sure she was taken care of. He left my money to his mistress. Technically, it was his money too. Joint account. The laugh that came out of me was pure hysteria. Of course he did. And let me guess, you helped him set that up too? Tom's silence was answer enough. Get off my property, I said quietly. Don't call me. Don't message me. Don't show up. At church or the grocery store or anywhere I might be, you're dead to you. Me. You understand? Dead. Margaret, that's extreme. I'm family. You were family. Now you're just the man who helped my husband betray me for years and thought revealing it would somehow make things better. I picked up the scattered papers, every message and statement and that awful letter. Take your closure and get out. Tom looked at Sarah, maybe hoping she'd intervene. She just stared at him with cold eyes. He finally left, walking quickly to his car, and I watched him drive away before collapsing onto my porch steps. Sarah sat beside me, and we stayed there in silence while my whole life rearranged itself around this new, horrible truth. Every memory was different now. Every anniversary, every vacation, every quiet Sunday morning reading the paper together. All of it corrupted by knowledge I couldn't unknow. What are you going to do? Sarah finally asked. I don't know. My voice sounded hollow. What can I do? He's dead. I can't yell at him. I can't demand answers. I can't even divorce him properly. You could tell people, Mom, everyone thinks Dad was this great guy. They talk about him at church like he was a saint. You could show them these messages, let them know who he really was. The thought was tempting and terrifying in equal measure. Robert had been beloved in our community, coached Little League for 15 years, volunteered at the food bank. Everyone who spoke at his funeral talked about his kindness, his dedication to family. What would they think if they knew the truth? And what about Linda? Sarah continued. If she suspected something and never told you, she's just as guilty as Uncle Tom. Linda. We'd been friends since our kids were in elementary school together. We traveled to Italy last year, my first trip abroad since Robert died. She'd held me while I cried on the plane, missing him. Had she been thinking about his betrayal that whole time, pitying me? I pulled out my phone and called her. She answered on the second ring. Margaret, I was just thinking about you. Are we still on for Cards Tuesday? Did you know Robert was cheating on me? Silence. Long enough to be damning. Linda, answer me. I suspected something wasn't right, she said carefully, but I never knew for certain. And he was sick, Margaret. I didn't think it was appropriate to bring up suspicions about a dying man. He wasn't dying when you first suspected. When was it? When did you first think something was wrong? More silence. Then, maybe 10 years ago, he made a comment at that barbecue, remember? About wishing he could start over, do things differently. The way he said it just felt off, but it could have meant anything. 10 years. She'd suspected for 10 years and never said a word. We're not friends anymore, I told her. Don't call me, don't text. We're done. Margaret, wait, let me explain. I hung up. Sarah was watching me with something like pride. Good, she doesn't deserve you. Nobody deserves anybody, I said bitterly. That's the lie we tell ourselves to feel less alone. We went inside finally, and I made tea, because that's what you do in a crisis. You perform the rituals, even when they feel meaningless. Sarah sat at my kitchen table, reading through more of the papers while I stared at the steam rising from my cup. There's bank statements here going back 15 years, Sarah said. Small withdrawals, regular ones. 100 here, 200 there. All going to that separate account. She did quick math on her phone. Mom, there's over $70,000 missing from your accounts. Not 30, 70. The number didn't even shock me anymore. What was money compared to everything else I'd lost? And there's something else, Sarah said slowly. Some of these messages mention a storage unit. Caroline was keeping things there. Things Robert wanted to save but couldn't keep at home. Things like what? Doesn't say. Just references to their stuff and memories and something about photos. Sarah looked up at me. Do you want to know what's in there? The address is in one of these statements. He was paying for it monthly. Did I want to know? Every revelation had been worse than the last. What fresh nightmare waited in a storage unit filled with evidence of Robert's secret life? Yes, I heard myself say. I want to see everything. We drove to the storage facility in silence. It was one of those big commercial places on the edge of town, rows and rows of orange doors secured with padlocks. Unit 217. Sarah had the code from the documents. Robert's birthday backwards, of course. The lock clicked open. Inside was a shrine to a life I'd never lived. Photos covered one wall. Robert and Caroline at beaches I'd never visited. Restaurants I'd never eaten at. Hotels I'd never slept in. Some photos were recent, from his supposed recovery period. Others were decades old, from before he'd even met me. There were boxes of letters, gifts still in their wrapping, even a scrapbook with "Our Story" written on the cover in careful calligraphy. Sarah picked up the scrapbook, flipped through it. Her hands were shaking. Mom, this goes all the way back. They've been together the entire time. Your whole marriage, he was with her too. I moved through the space like a ghost, touching nothing, just looking. There was a fake fern in the corner that Caroline had probably put there to make the space homier, a small rug, a folding chair so they could sit and reminisce about their secret love affair. How many times had Robert come here? Had he stopped by on his way home from work, spending an hour with these memories before coming home to me? Had he ever compared us, choosing which version of his life felt more real? There's journals, Sarah said, pulling leather-bound books from a box. His journals! Do you want me to read them? No, the word came out sharp. Put them back. Mom, they might have answers. I don't want his answers anymore. I don't want his explanations or his justifications or his careful documentation of how he managed to betray me for 40 years. I grabbed the scrapbook from her hands and threw it across the unit. It hit the photo wall, sending pictures fluttering down like dying butterflies. I want him here so I can ask him to his face why I wasn't enough, why he married me if he loved her, why he let me waste my entire adult life on a lie. Sarah caught me as my knees buckled. We sank to the floor of that terrible storage unit, surrounded by evidence of my husband's double life, and I cried harder than I had when he died. Because at least in death, I'd thought I was mourning someone real. Now I didn't even have that. We should burn it all, Sarah said suddenly. Everything in here. Just light it on fire and walk away. The image was appealing, watching all these carefully preserved lies turn to ash. But it felt too easy, too clean. Robert had worked hard to build this secret world. He'd spent money and time and effort maintaining it. Destroying it felt like letting him off easy. No, I said, pulling myself together. We're taking it. All of it. Every photo, every letter, every journal. We're going to read every single word and look at every single picture. And then we're going to decide what to do with it. We loaded everything into Sarah's car. It took 6 trips. The storage unit stood empty except for that fake fern, which I left behind. Let whoever rented the space next wonder about its story. At home, we spread everything across my living room floor. It was overwhelming, the sheer volume of deception. But we started sorting, creating piles. Sarah handled the journals while I went through the photos, and slowly a fuller picture emerged. Robert had met Caroline in college. They dated for 3 years before breaking up over something Robert's journal called fundamental incompatibility. She'd wanted adventure, travel, instability. He'd wanted security, routine, family. They'd gone their separate ways. He'd met me 6 months later, but they'd never fully let go. A letter here, a phone call there. When Caroline's marriage ended 12 years into mine, Robert started seeing her again. Not constantly, but regularly. A weekend every few months when he told me he was at conferences or visiting his college friends. Phone calls late at night after I'd gone to sleep. And through it all, he'd maintained both lives, never fully committing to either. The journals were the worst. Page after page of Robert analyzing his feelings, weighing options, describing both me and Caroline like we were items on a comparison chart. Margaret is stable, he wrote. She makes me feel grounded, but Caroline makes me feel alive. With Margaret, the first can build a life. With Caroline, I can escape from life. Neither woman is complete. Together, they make the perfect partner. Together, they made the perfect partner. Like we were pieces of a person he was assembling to meet his needs, not actual human beings with our own feelings and desires. Listen to this part, Sarah said, her voice tight with anger. She read from a journal dated 5 years ago. Margaret asked me today if I was happy. I lied and said yes because the truth is too complicated. I'm happy with parts of my life. Happy with Sarah and the grandkids. Happy with the house and the routine. But there's always this ache for what I left behind with Caroline. Sometimes I think I made the wrong choice marrying Margaret. But then I remember I didn't really choose. I just did what was expected. He didn't choose me. After 40 years of marriage, after raising a daughter together, after building a whole life, he still thought of me as the option he'd settled for, because it was expected. Keep going, I told Sarah. Read all of it. I need to hear it. She read entry after entry, years of Robert's private thoughts. His frustration with my emotional neediness after my mother died. His resentment of family obligations that cut into his time with Caroline. His satisfaction at successfully managing 2 relationships without either woman discovering the truth. He wrote about it like an achievement, proof of his cleverness. There was an entry from the day he proposed to me. I remember that day perfectly. We'd gone hiking, and he'd set up a picnic at the summit. The ring had belonged to his grandmother. I'd cried and said yes immediately, certain I'd found my soulmate. His journal entry from that night: I asked Margaret to marry me today. She said yes. It's the practical choice. She'll be a good wife, a good mother. Caroline would never settle down like this. I'm doing the right thing, even if part of me will always wonder what if. Even in the moment he proposed, he'd been thinking about Caroline. I stood up abruptly. I need air. Outside, the sun was setting, painting my quiet suburban street in orange light. My neighbors were coming home from work, walking dogs, living their normal lives. Mrs. Chen across the street waved at me. I waved back automatically. Did she know? Had everyone known except me? Sarah joined me on the porch. What do you want to do with all of it? I don't know yet, but I'm not hiding it. Everyone needs to see who Robert really was. The decision settled over me with surprising certainty. I'm tired protecting his memory. People will judge you, Sarah warned. You know they will. They'll say you must have driven him to it somehow, that you weren't attentive enough or understanding enough. Let them. I spent 40 years caring what people thought. Look where that got me. I turned to face my daughter. Tomorrow, I'm calling the lawyer who handled Robert's estate. I want to know if I can get that money back from Caroline. It was stolen from me. Hell yes, Sarah said fiercely. Take her for everything. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept reading journals, torturing myself with Robert's words. There was an entry from our 25th anniversary, when I'd planned a surprise party and invited everyone we knew. I'd worked for weeks on that party, wanting it to be perfect. The journal entry. Margaret threw another party. She does love making a fuss. Spent the whole night wishing I was with Caroline instead. We could have been in Paris this week, but I'm stuck here pretending to be grateful. We could have been in Paris. With my money, probably. Money I'd saved from my teaching salary, thinking we were building our future together. I called my lawyer at 8 in the morning, before I could lose my nerve. Richard had known Robert for years, had golfed with him regularly. He was shocked when I explained what I'd discovered. Margaret, I had no idea. Robert always spoke so highly of you. Can I get the money back? The $70,000 he transferred to Caroline? Possibly. If we can prove he transferred it without your knowledge from joint accounts, you might have a case. But it won't be easy, and it won't be cheap. He paused. Are you sure you want to do this? It'll be public, messy. Everyone will know about the affair. Good. Let them know. I'm done protecting him. Richard agreed to take the case. Next, I called the church where Robert had been so beloved, where his memorial plaque hung in the garden. I asked to speak to Pastor Williams. I need you to remove Robert's memorial plaque, I told him when he came to the phone. Margaret? What? Why would we do that? Because he deserved to be memorialized. He was an adulterer who stole money from me to give to his mistress. He lied to me for 40 years. I won't have his name honored in that church. Pastor Williams was quiet for a long moment. These are serious accusations. They're not accusations, they're facts. I have proof. Journals, messages, financial records. I'll bring them by this afternoon if you'd like to see them. I did bring them. Pastor Williams read through everything with growing horror, his face getting redder with each page. When he finished, he looked at me with something like pity, which I hated, but also understanding. I'll speak to the board, he said quietly. The plaque will come down. Word spread fast. By evening, my phone was exploding with messages. Half the congregation calling to express shock and support, the other half calling to tell me I was being vindictive, that speaking ill of the dead was wrong, that I should have kept it private. Linda called 7 times. I didn't answer. Tom left a voicemail. Margaret, what you're doing is destructive. Robert is gone. Dragging his name through the mud won't bring you peace. Please think about Sarah, about the grandkids. They don't need to know these things about their grandfather. I called Sarah. Do you want the grandkids to know the truth about your father? They're old enough, she said, 10 and 12. They should know that even people they love can be deeply flawed. Better they learn that now than find out later and feel betrayed like we did. So we told them. Sarah sat her kids down and explained that Grandpa Robert had done some very hurtful things to Grandma Margaret, that adults sometimes make terrible choices, even when they seem like good people. The kids cried, they asked questions, but Sarah was honest with them, and I was grateful for that. Caroline finally called me. I don't know how she got my number, maybe from Tom. Mrs. Fletcher, I think we should talk. I don't have anything to say to you. Please, I never meant to hurt you. Robert and we had something special. We couldn't help it. The audacity of that statement took my breath away. You couldn't help it? For 40 years, you couldn't help destroying my marriage? It wasn't like that. Robert loved you in his way. He just loved me too. Did you need the money? The $70,000 he stole from me? My voice was shaking. Were you that desperate, or did you just like taking what was mine? He wanted to give it to me. I didn't ask for it. But you took it. Silence. I'm suing you, I told her, for every penny. And when I win, I'm going to donate it all to the women's shelter downtown, in Robert's name, so everyone knows where it came from and why. That's petty. No, petty would be slashing your tires or keying your car. This is justice. See you in court. I hung up before she could respond. The lawsuit took 8 months. 8 months of depositions and financial audits, and having every detail of my marriage examined in legal documents. Caroline fought hard, claiming the money was a gift, that she couldn't be expected to return it, but Richard was thorough, and the evidence was overwhelming. Robert had transferred the money in small increments over years, all from joint accounts, without my knowledge or consent. We won. All of it, plus court costs, plus interest. The day the money hit my account, I went straight to the women's shelter and wrote them a check for the full amount. $83,642, the director cried. They'd been trying to expand their facility for years, but couldn't afford it. This would cover a new wing, more beds for women escaping abuse. We'll put up a plaque, the director said, thanking you for your generosity. Don't thank me, I said. Thank my late husband, Robert Fletcher, whose guilty conscience is finally doing some good. They did put up a plaque. It reads, the Margaret Fletcher Memorial Wing, funded in memory of second chances and new beginnings. Not in Robert's name, in mine. Sarah and I cleaned out the storage unit the day the plaque went up. We took everything to a bonfire pit at Sarah's property, piled it all up, and lit it on fire. Photos, journals, letters, gifts, all of it. We stood there watching 40 years of lies turn to smoke and ash, and when it was done, I felt lighter than I had in months. Tom tried to reconcile. He sent me a letter saying he understood I was hurt, but that family was forever, and we should try to move past this. I sent the letter back with a note. You chose your brother over basic decency. Live with that choice. Linda showed up at my door once, crying, begging for forgiveness. I told her the same thing I'd told Tom. She'd made her choice. I wasn't interested in people who protected my pain instead of preventing it. I started traveling, places I'd always wanted to see, but Robert had said were too expensive or impractical. Paris first, ironically, then Scotland, then Japan. I joined a travel group for older women, and we explored the world together. None of them knew my story at first. I was just Margaret, the retired teacher who loved art museums and trying weird food. Eventually, I told them over wine one night in Morocco. They were horrified and sympathetic, and one woman named Diane said something that stuck with me. You know what the worst part is? You'll never get to confront him. He took that from you too. She was right. That was the worst part. Robert had died thinking his secrets were safe, thinking he'd successfully managed both worlds right up until the end. He'd never had to face my anger or my hurt or my disappointment. He'd escaped consequences entirely. But I was done letting him haunt me. He'd stolen enough of my life. I wouldn't give him my future, too. It's been 2 years since that morning I found the messages. I'm 70 now. I have a small apartment I love, decorated exactly how I want it. No compromises. I see Sarah and the grandkids regularly. I travel 3 or 4 times a year. I volunteer at the women's shelter, talking to women who are rebuilding their lives after betrayal and abuse. Sometimes people ask if I'm lonely, if I miss being married. I tell them the truth. I was lonelier in my marriage than I've ever been alone. At least now, I know exactly where I stand. No more wondering if I'm enough, if I'm loved, if the life I think I'm living is real. I am enough. I always was. Robert's failure to see that was his loss, not my deficit. And I'm not done living yet, not by a long shot. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Would you have exposed the truth like I did, or kept it private to protect the memory?